Ice Princess by Camilla Lackberg. Part 2. Superintendent Melberg patted his large paunch and debated whether to take a little nap so that his substantial lunch could be digested in peace and quiet. But he barely managed to close his eyes before a determined knocking announced that Annika Janssen, the station secretary, wanted something. "What the hell? Can't you see I'm busy?" In an attempt to look busy, he rummaged aimlessly among the papers lying in stacks on his desk, but succeeded only in tipping over a cup of coffee. He grabbed the closest thing he could find to wipe up the mess, which happened to be his shirt tail, since it was seldom tucked into his trousers. "Oh, damn it all! I'm the bloody boss of this place. Haven't you learned to show a little respect for your superiors and not before you come barging in?" She didn't feel like pointing out that she had actually done just that. "I presume you have something to tell me?" Melberg seethed. Annika answered in a restrained voice. "Forensic medicine in Göteborg has been looking for you. Forensic pathologist Tor Pedersen, to be precise. You can ring him at this number." She held out a piece of paper with the number carefully printed on it. "Did he say what it's about?" They didn't hear from forensic medicine very often out here in the sticks. Perhaps there would be a chance for some inspired police work for a change. He waved Annika away distractedly and clamped the telephone receiver between his ear and shoulder. Then he eagerly began dialing the number. Annika quickly backed out of the room and closed the door behind her. She sat down at her own desk and cursed, as she had so many times before, the decision that had sent Melberg to the tiny police station in Tarnumshede. According to rampant rumours at the station, he had made himself unwelcome in Göteborg by abusing a refugee who was in his custody. An internal investigation had been unable to prove anything, but there was concern about what else he might do, so he was immediately moved to the post of superintendent in Tarnumshede. His former superiors in Göteborg reckoned he wouldn't be able to do much damage there. Up until now, this assessment had been correct. On the other hand, he wasn't doing much good either. Previously, Annika had got on well at her job, but that was all over now with Melberg as her boss. It wasn't enough that he was perpetually rude. He also saw himself as God's gift to women. What she considered his most repulsive feature, however, was the atrocious comb-over he had constructed to hide his bald patch. Annika shuddered at the thought of how it must look when not combed over. Awakened from a deep and dreamless sleep, Erika at first could not identify the sound. By the time she realized that it was the shrill ring of the telephone that woke her, it had already rung many times. She jumped out of bed to answer it. "Erika Falk?" Her voice was no more than a croak. "Sorry, did I wake you? This is Henrik Wigner. I just had a call from Birgit. Apparently she got a call this morning from a particularly rude police superintendent from the Tarnumshede station. He more or less ordered her, in not very polite terms, to come down to the station. Evidently my presence is also desired. Birgit is quite upset, and since neither Karl-Erik nor Julia is in Fjällbacka at the moment for various reasons, I wonder whether you could do me a big favour and go over to see her. It will be a couple of hours before I can get back to Fjällbacka, and I don't want her to be alone that long. I know it's a lot to ask, and we don't actually know each other that well, but I have no one else to turn to." "Of course I'll go over to see Birgit. It's no problem. I just have to throw some clothes on. I can be there in about 15 minutes. "I'm eternally grateful to you, really. Birgit has never been particularly stable, and I'd like someone to be with her until I can make it back to Fjällbacka. I'll ring her and tell her you're on your way. Once again, thank you." Patrick Hedström sighed. The stacks of paper had grown to imposing heights on his desk. It was astonishing how a small community could generate so many crime reports. Mostly petty matters, to be sure, but each report had to be investigated. and that's why he sat here with administrative duties worthy of an Eastern European bureaucracy. And now Melberg had asked him to sit in on the interview with the mother and husband of the woman who was found murdered in Fjällbacka. He couldn't help feeling a tingle of anticipation. At the police academy, they had been trained in interview situations, but so far he'd only had a chance to try out his talents in that area in connection with stolen bicycles and domestic abuse. Patrick looked at the clock. Time to go over to Melberg's office where the conversation would take place. Patrick had heard through the grapevine that the mother kept claiming that the daughter couldn't possibly have killed herself, a claim which had now turned out to be correct. He gathered up his notebook, a pen and a coffee cup, and went down the corridor. With his hands full, he had to use his elbows and feet to get the door open, so it wasn't until he put down his things and turned to face the room that he caught sight of her. His heart skipped a beat. She looked just the same. Tall and curvy, with hair curling to her shoulders in several shades of blonde that blended to a warm shade. Even as a little girl, Erika had been vain, and he could see that she still placed great emphasis on the details of her appearance. Her face lit up with surprise when she saw him, but Melberg was giving him a stern look to sit down, so he merely mimed a silent hello. So, you are probably aware of why I called you here? Melberg made a long pause, for effect. I am Superintendent Bertil Melberg, Chief of Tarnanshede Police Station, and this is Patrick Hagedum, who will be assisting me during this investigation. He nodded at Patrick, who was sitting a bit outside the semicircle formed by Erika, Henrik, and Birgit in front of Melberg's desk. Birgit leaned forward in her chair, and Henrik quickly put a protective arm round her shoulders. Melberg went on. We have confirmation that your daughter could not have taken her own life. Suicide can be definitively ruled out, according to the medical examiner's report. The main reason we know she was murdered is that at the time her wrists were slashed, she could not have been conscious. We found a large amount of sedative in her blood. While she was unconscious, some person or persons apparently first put her in the bathtub, filled it with water, and then slashed her wrists to try and make it look like suicide. The curtains in the office were drawn against the sharp midday sun. Do you know who did it? Birgit had taken out a small embroidered handkerchief from her handbag and carefully dried the corners of her eyes so as not to ruin her makeup. As Melberg observed each of the participants in deliberate silence, his right hand straightened his comb-over, which had slipped too far down one side. He cleared his throat with authority. Perhaps the two of you might tell me that. Us? Henrik's surprise sounded genuine. How would we know that? This must be the work of a madman. Alexandra didn't have any enemies. So you say. Patrick thought for an instant that a shadow passed across the face of Alex's husband. The next second it was gone, and Henrik was again his calm and controlled self. Are we suspects? Birgit looked as astounded as if the superintendent had changed into a pumpkin right before her eyes. The statistics speak for themselves in cases of murder. The great majority of perpetrators are usually found among the close family members. Now, I'm not saying that's true in this case, but I'm sure you can understand that we have to be quite certain. No stone will be left unturned, I can personally vouch for that. With my broad experience in murder cases, another dramatic pause, this will surely be resolved quickly. But I would like both of you to submit an account of your actions on the days leading up to the point in time when we suspect Alexandra was killed. And what point in time would that be? Asked Henrik. The last of us to speak with her was Birgit. All the medical examiner can say is that she has been dead for approximately a week. Naturally, we will check your statements about when you found her, but we have one piece of information that indicates she died sometime before 9 o'clock on Friday night. At around 6 o'clock, which must have been just after she arrived in Fjällbacka, she rang a Lars Talander about a furnace that wasn't working properly. He couldn't come right away, but promised to be there no later than 9 that evening. According to his testimony, it was precisely 9 o'clock when he knocked on the door. No one came to the door, and after waiting for a while he drove back home. Our working hypothesis is therefore that she died sometime that evening after she arrived in Fjällbacka, since it seems unlikely that she would have forgotten that the repairman was coming to look at the furnace, considering how cold it was in the house. His hair was slipping again, this time down the left side. What time did you say you talked to her? Malberg directed his question at Birgit. Well, I'm not quite sure. She thought for a moment. Sometime after 7, about 7:15 or 7:30, I think. We spoke briefly because Alex said she had a visitor. Birgit blanched. Could it have been? Malberg nodded solemnly. Entirely possible, Mrs. Cargrain. But it's our job to find out, and I can assure you that we will put all our resources on the case. In our line of work, the elimination of suspects is one of our primary tasks, so please write up an account of Friday evening. Do you want me to provide an alibi too? Erika asked. I don't think that will be necessary, but we would like you to tell us everything you saw when you were inside the house the day you discovered her. You can leave your written accounts with Assistant Haidstrom. Everyone turned to look at Patrick, and he nodded in agreement. They began to get up. A tragic event, this, Malberg said. Particularly in view of the child. They all turned their eyes to Malberg. The child? Birgit looked from Malberg to Henrik and back. Yes, she was in the 3rd month of pregnancy, according to the medical examiner. Surely this can't have been a surprise to you, could it? Malberg grinned and winked roguishly at Henrik. Patrick was utterly appalled by his boss's tactless behaviour. Henrik's face slowly lost all colour until it looked like white marble. Birgit turned to stare at him in astonishment. Were you two going to have a child? Why didn't you tell me? Oh, God! Birgit pressed her handkerchief to her mouth and sobbed uncontrollably, without a thought for the mascara that now ran in rivulets down her cheeks. Henrik again put a protective arm round her, but over Birgit's head he met Patrick's gaze. It was obvious to Patrick that Henrik hadn't a clue that Alexandra was pregnant. Judging by Erika's expression, however, it was clear that she did know. We'll talk about this when we get home, Birgit, said Henrik. He turned to Patrick. I'll see to it that you receive written accounts about Friday evening. I suppose you'll probably want to interview us in more detail once you have them. Patrick nodded affirmatively. He raised his eyebrows to give Erika a questioning look. Henrik, I'll be right there, she said. I just have to speak with Patrick for a moment. We're old friends. She lingered in the corridor as Henrik led Birgit out to the car. Imagine running into you here. That was a surprise, said Patrick. He rocked nervously back and forth on his heels. Yes, if I'd thought about it, I would have remembered that you work here, of course. She was twisting the handle of her purse between her fingers and looking at him with her head cocked a little to one side. All her small gestures were so familiar to him. It's been a long time, he said. I'm sorry I couldn't come to your parents' funeral. How are you coping, you and your sister? Despite her height, she looked small all of a sudden, and he resisted the urge to caress her cheek. We're doing all right. Anna drove home right after the funeral, but I've been here a couple of weeks now, trying to clear up the house. It's not easy. I heard that a woman in Fjällbacka had discovered the murder victim, but I had no idea it was you. That must have been horrible. The two of you were friends when you were kids, weren't you? Yes. I don't think I'll ever be able to erase that sight from my mind. Well, I have to run now. They're waiting for me in the car. Maybe we could get together sometime? I'm going to be here in Fjällbacka for a while yet. She was already on her way down the hall. How about dinner? Saturday night, he said. At my house? 8 o'clock? I'm in the book. Sure, that sounds nice. See you at 8 then. She backed out through the door. As soon as she was out of sight, he did a little improvised dance in the corridor. But his joy was spoiled a bit when he realized how much work it would take to get his house into presentable shape. After Karin left him, he hadn't really felt like dealing with the housework. He and Erika had known each other since birth. Their mothers had been best friends since childhood and were as close as two sisters. Patrick and Erika played together a lot when they were small, and it was no exaggeration to say that Erika was his first love. He had fallen in love with others since then, of course, and when he married Karin, he was utterly convinced that they would grow old together. But Erika was always in the back of his mind. Sometimes months would pass without thinking about her. Sometimes he thought about her several times a day. The piles of paper had not been miraculously reduced while he was gone. With a deep sigh, he sat down at his desk and picked up the page on top. The work was monotonous enough that he could ponder the menu for Saturday at the same time. Dessert, in any case, was already decided. Erika had always loved ice cream. Anders Nilsson awoke with a nasty taste in his mouth. It had been a real blowout yesterday. His buddies had come over in the afternoon, and together they had kept drinking until the small hours. A vague memory of the police stopping by at some point last night hovered just beyond his reach. He tried to sit up, but the whole room spun around, and he decided to stay where he was for a while. His right hand was aching, and he raised it toward the ceiling to look at it. The knuckles were severely scraped. Damn, there must have been a bit of a fight last night. That's why the cop showed up. More and more of his memory began to return. It was the guys who had brought up the subject of the suicide. One of them had started talking a bunch of shit about Alex. Upper-class bitch and society whore were words he had used about her. Anders had short-circuited, and after that he remembered only a red haze of rage as he started bashing the guy in a drunken fury. He was the only one who had the right to judge her. The telephone rang with a shrill sound. He tried to ignore it, but decided it was less bothersome to get up and answer the phone than to let the noise keep slicing into his brain. Yes, this is Anders. He was slurring his words. Hi, it's Mama. How are you doing? I feel like shit. He slid down the wall to sit on the floor. What the hell time is it? It's almost 4 in the afternoon. Did I wake you? Nope. His head felt disproportionately large and kept threatening to fall down between his knees. I was in town shopping earlier, she said. There is a lot of talk about something that I want you to know about. Are you listening? Yeah, damn it, I'm listening. Apparently, Alex didn't commit suicide. She was murdered. I just wanted you to know. Silence. Anders, hello? Did you hear what I said? Yeah, sure, I heard you. What did you say? Alex was murdered? Yes, that's what they're saying in town anyway. Apparently Birgit, her mother, was down at Tarnham's Hader police station and got the news today. Oh, shit. Look, Mama, I've got to go. We'll talk later. Anders? Anders! He had already hung up. With an enormous effort, he showered and got dressed. After taking 2 Tylenols, he felt more like a human being. The vodka bottle in the kitchen tried to tempt him, but he refused to give in. He had to be sober right now. Well, relatively sober at least. The phone rang again. He ignored it. Instead, he took a phone book out of the cabinet in the hall and quickly found the number he was looking for. His hands were shaking as he punched in the number. It seemed to ring 100 times. "Hi, it's Anders," he said when the receiver on the other end was finally picked up. "No, don't hang up, damn it. We have to talk." "Well, you don't have that much of a choice. I have to tell you. I'll be at your place in 15 minutes and you better fucking be there. I don't give a shit who else is there. Don't forget who has the most to lose here." "That's bullshit. I'm going down. See you in 15 minutes." Anders slammed down the receiver. After taking a couple of deep breaths, he pulled on his jacket and went out. He didn't bother to lock the door. The phone in the flat started ringing furiously again. Erika was exhausted when she got back to the house. There was a strained silence in the car during the trip home, and Erika understood that Henrik was facing a difficult choice. Should he tell Birgit that he wasn't the father of Alexandra's child? Erika didn't envy him. The truth wasn't always the best solution. It was already getting dark, and she was grateful that her father had put in outdoor lamps that turned on automatically when anyone approached the house. She poured herself a big glass of red wine and curled up on the wicker sofa on the veranda. The darkness was impenetrable, but she still stared straight ahead. It was no use to pretend that Alex's death had not affected her deeply. What bothered her most of all was that the image of Alex conveyed by family and friends did not fit at all with the Alex she had known. She got up and put on her coat again. Her car keys were in her pocket, and at the last moment she took a pocket torch and stuffed it into the other pocket of her coat. The house at the top of the hill looked deserted in the violet light from the street lamp. Erika parked the car in the car park behind the school. The bushes on their property offered a welcome cover as she cautiously sneaked up to the veranda. She hoped the old habits persisted and raised the doormat. There was the spare key to the house, hidden in exactly the same place as 25 years ago. It was eerie stepping into the shadowy house. She played the beam of her torch over the living room. Everything was in perfect order, which created a desolate impression. There wasn't a single crease on the sofa, or even a magazine laid out on the coffee table. She turned right at the top of the stairs and entered the master bedroom. Erika remembered it as Alex's parents' bedroom, but now it was obviously Alex and Henrik's room. Unlike the other rooms, the bedroom seemed lived in. Small personal items lay scattered here and there. On the nightstand lay a pair of glasses and a book of poems by Gustav Freuding. A pair of stockings were flung on the floor, and some jumpers were laid out on the bedspread. This was the first time Erika felt that Alex really had lived in this house. She began cautiously looking through drawers and cabinets. She still didn't know what she was searching for, and felt like a voyeur as she rummaged among Alex's lovely silk underwear. All of a sudden she paused. She clearly heard a sound from downstairs through the stillness in the house. A door being carefully opened and closed. Erika looked all around her in panic. Instinctively she crept over to the closest wardrobe, climbed in among the clothes, and closed the door behind her. She suddenly realized that she was holding something in her hand and put it in her jacket pocket. She scarcely dared breathe. The intruder was searching the bedroom. Drawers were pulled out, and Erika knew that the wardrobes were next. Her panic rose. She was lucky to have stepped into a wardrobe with several long coats in it, and she draped them in front of her. She hoped that it wasn't Alex's killer out there, only a few meters away. All at once the door to the wardrobe was opened, and Erika felt a gust of fresh air. She held her breath. The wardrobe didn't seem to be hiding any secrets or valuables, at least not for the person who was doing the searching, and the door was closed again almost at once. The other doors were opened and closed just as quickly, and the next moment she heard the footsteps going out the bedroom door and down the stairs. She didn't dare step out of the wardrobe until a good while after she heard the front door carefully closing. The room looked the same as when Erika came in. Whoever the visitor was, the search had been careful and had left no traces. She looked around the room one last time. There was something she couldn't really put her finger on. Something was missing, but for the life of her she couldn't think what it was. Oh well, it would probably come back to her later. She didn't dare stay in the house any longer. She put back the key where she had found it. She didn't feel safe until she was back in her car with the motor running. That was enough excitement for one evening. A stiff cognac would soothe her soul and drive off some of her uneasiness. When she pulled into the driveway at home, she saw that scarcely an hour had passed since she left. That surprised her. It had felt like an eternity. Alex Tregear was reading The Ice Princess by Camilla Lackberg. The translator was Stephen T. Murray. The Ice Princess was abridged for radio by Alison Joseph and produced by Gemma Jenkins.